What's up guys, I'm Josh and welcome to my video on making Woody's Roundup from Toy Story 2 kind of realistic with CGI and VFX. This is going to be a quick breakdown of the process and workflow behind my Woody's Roundup character builds, animations and renders. So where this project started was actually with a completely separate project I've been working on, which definitely isn't ready, but it may or may not involve toys coming to life. And while I was making that, it got me thinking about Toy Story. So in a similar style to my Dexter's Laboratory and Ed, Edd n Eddy projects, I decided to make some Woody's Roundup animations. So I set up the Woody's Roundup theme tune, which has a very interesting music video, to loop until I was finished, and got to work, and maybe slowly went insane. Started with Woody and actually had the most trouble with him out of any of the characters I've made recently. As usual, I made the base model in Character Creator, but this time I took a lot of his outfit from this cowboy character base, and it was mainly just reshaping things and changing the materials. My first few attempts were a bit too cool and not really staying with how Woody actually looks, so eventually I came back around to the original design and stuck to the jeans tucked into his boots, the simple check shirt and cowhide waistcoat. This took quite a few iterations and for a long time it felt very YMCA. Where Woody really started coming together was using the cowhide material from Polygon that I messed around with a bit to get the right balance of looking like the original toy and somewhat realistic. I added a wooden button kind of thing to his back to reference the toy pull ring that makes him speak in the Toy Story movies. And I'm not really sure what this could be in this realistic version, maybe something that some kind of bandolier or a gun could attach to. I thought for a while about making him look like Tom Hanks, but a few people have done that sort of thing, and I thought if I did that, I'd need to make all of the characters look like their voice actors, which is just making everything a lot more difficult. I then tried to make an older, more rugged, generic cowboy, but that just resulted in a few versions that felt more like someone dressing up like Woody rather than a realistic take on the existing character. After about 10 different versions, I eventually settled on this younger, softer sort of looking guy. Sort of feels like it could be Woody. After I finished with Woody, I took the same approach to Jessie and Stinky Pete, who all share similar materials and colours to help everything feel like it's in the same world. Once I'd made the characters, I had a good idea of the sort of style and look I was going for, which feels like a realistic-ish video game kind of Red Dead Redemption look. And so all I really needed to do was make up some scenes from the Kitbash 3D Outlaw kit and add in a sort of dry, hot-looking atmosphere with pretty clear skies. The first scene that came to mind as something that could easily loop and made sense for a cowboy was some kind of target practice. Thankfully, the Kitbash 3D Outlaw kit has a guns and ammo store that has a small shooting range at the back. So I used that as a starting point and altered some of the walls, added in some barrels, more grass, shifted things around until I had a scene where Woody could be stood in the mid sort of foreground, but there could be extra bits behind him and to the side. For the sort of town high street, I added in all the parts that a western town needs, like a sheriff's station, a bank and a saloon, even though you can't really see what they are. And then I got to work on adding in the animated characters. For Woody, I combined a few different pre-made iClone animations of him shooting, turning and reloading. It's not very well done in the end, to be honest. It's a bit messy, and I tried to hide as much of the mistakes as possible by putting grass in the way of his feet that move a bit too much. I also couldn't get his hands to work properly with the gun, so I just angled him away from the camera so that you could kind of see roughly what he was doing without actually showing it. After Woody was at a point I was happy with, I added a simple animation of Jessie walking by and Pete pushing his cart. After rendering out the separate layers, I added in the camera effects like the dust particles, gun smoke, a small bullet impact on the target for each shot, camera shake and motion blur. I'm still not totally happy with the animation in the end. Woody's movement is kind of a mess. He moves and shuffles around a bit too much, and Pete's walk is also way too high from the ground. If you look closely, you can see he's not walking on the floor. But usually I'd sort of redo these things. This time I decided to just accept how the problems are, because I spent a lot of time making Woody and trying to animate him. And I did sort of have in mind that adding all the camera effects and the camera shaking and the blur and everything would hide the problems. But after I got it all together, it was good to go. For the second animation, I wanted something similar, maybe a bit too similar in the end, to be honest. So I framed up this side of a stable and added in a few extra bits, along with a mine entrance in the background. This time I used the iClone horse animation pack to put Bullseye in there. The pack comes with a bunch of horse animations and human animations to go alongside them. So I can animate Bullseye just sort of stood there looking around, and Woody next to him, brushing him. Woody's arm does move a bit weirdly at points, mainly because I just got a bit too caught up making sure they were as close as possible, and it looked like Woody was actually brushing Bullseye without any weird collisions or Woody's hand just completely missing him. I added in Jesse and Pete. Actually, they are the exact same animations from the first one, just copied over, and you can definitely tell I've just done that because Pete still isn't properly on the ground. I have no idea how, despite knowing that was a problem in the first one, I made the exact same mistake again. After rendering out all the layers, adding the usual camera effects and the audio, this one was good to go as well. Once I'd done with the animations, I quickly threw together a 3D version of the Woody's Roundup logo with a rope I attached to a curve in Blender, and you can just make up any shape or word pretty easily. And that's about it for making Woody's Roundup kind of realistic with CGI and VFX. This was another fun project to put together that, as usual, ended up being way more work than I meant it to be. I am working on a few other non-making characters realistic projects, but before I get there, I've got at least one more I want to do that after Woody, there's no prizes for guessing who I'm going to move on to next. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. And for more projects like Realistic Woody's Roundup, Ed, Edd n Eddy or Dexter's Lab, and breakdowns like this, be sure to like and subscribe.